So let's begin with our discussion today by taking a sort of more of a less a candid look at where e-invoicing adoption and API automation stand today. Just a quick note on the survey itself. So as I mentioned, PayStream Advisors and Purchasing Insights collaborated on the survey, on conducting the survey. It was conducted in large part over Q3 and Q4 of 2012, and then released here in the first quarter of 2013. The survey was global in nature, reaching out to about 200 companies, ranging in size from what I'll call medium, to really very large enterprises, multi-billion-dollar organizations. The companies reached were very much cross-industry, so representing all major industries. And then the respondents were very much cross-functional, so representatives from AP, procurement, treasury, etc. So very good cross-section of perspectives as input to the survey. So first, let's look at what the survey said about companies and their motivation for investing in e-invoicing. The survey reveals that companies are motivated by a broad variety of goals, and these roughly fall into two categories: what I'll call process related, and then let's call the second group financial related. So not surprisingly, the first group the leading motivation, surprisingly, was reducing overall processing cost, followed closely by elimination of paper. And as you can imagine, it's really hard to do one without the other. Paper, of course, has tremendous processing cost overhead, but it also has many implications in terms of the effectiveness of downstream processes, like matching and exception handling, which can drive much higher implicit costs down the line. Elimination of paper is followed closely by speeding up invoice approval cycle times. The study confirms that the reason for this, in large part, being such a highly rated motivation, is the implications for more effective working capital management through things like early payment discount management. You can see this kind of supported below by the strong showing for better cash management as a motivation. And the rest of the balance of the second group, is largely procurement and sourcing centric motivations, but none of these really rise to the level of the cost reduction and process improvement you see above. So next, the survey, let's look at what the survey says about the barriers the companies are encountering in trying to implement e-invoicing and AP automation. So of the 200 or so responding companies, approximately half have invested in some form of e-invoicing project. So about half the companies have some real world experience at trying these things, and the other half are in some stage of evaluating or looking at these types of solutions, generally speaking. Again, let's loosely classify these barriers into two groups: supplier related and organizational related. And what we see is that by far the leading barriers in the first group have to do with supplier connectivity and ease of use for suppliers, followed closely by supplier cost and supplier value proposition, finishing in a sort of close tie for third. And we think these results are a real indictment of the status quo in our industry. Much of the pain of e-invoicing initiatives are falling onto the shoulders of suppliers, and not a lot of the benefits, frankly. And we see this as the major reason for the suppliers' resistance to these types of initiatives, and also to the overall poor adoption of these types of solutions, particularly in the U.S. So just to summarize, some of the key findings of the study. Not surprisingly, the U.S. Lags behind the world in electronic and AP automation adoption. And this has something to do, of course, with some of the government-led initiatives in Europe and some of the mandates in countries like Latin America. There are still significant supplier-related barriers. These problems have not been solved. 55% of companies have invested in a solution, and yet 77% of invoices that are received are still received as paper. And AP still spends 35% of their time, fielding very simple inquiries, both external and internal, as to things like invoice status. Have you received my invoice? When am I going to get paid? Those types of things. So big challenges remain. What conclusions can we draw from these results? Well, this may be a little bit harsh, but we think the industry is broken. We think this indicates the industry is broken. We think it shows that there's lots of room for improvement in how we try to solve these problems, both through technology and through our different approaches. The indication of the supplier cost being a barrier, we think this is an important one. You tax something, you get less of it. We think taxing suppliers, this indicates that taxing suppliers is a bad idea. And of course, there still remains this supply chain connectivity problem, and this is particularly so in the medium and small suppliers. We'll call those the long tail. And then overall, what this indicates is that there's a real lack of innovation. As I said, these solutions have been around for a while. They're still failing to solve the predominant challenges out there, and there's lots of room for improvement. So at this point, let's shift and talk about what Tradeshift is, and how do we approach e-invoicing enablement in a way that yields better results than you see in this survey. So we started Tradeshift about 3 years ago, and frankly we saw a lot of these same challenges, and it's why we started Tradeshift and why we started Tradeshift and set out to do things a bit differently. And let's start with our business model. We started Tradeshift with a business model that does not rely on supplier fees. Again, we don't think taxing the transactions will encourage suppliers to use participate in the initiative. So we derive our revenue from other sources. A key difference in how we approach things. We have focused quite heavily on investing in new technologies and innovative partnerships frankly that solve these problems, and this includes things like new technology which converts paper-based suppliers to true electronic connections. It also means partnering with a specific goal of fixing a problem or something that's broken, and that's part of today's discussion is about our relationship with Intuit and how that plays into this idea. Last and not least, Tradeshift is an open platform, and what that means is that our cloud-based platform primarily is serving to connect companies around the world, and through a variety of innovative connectivity methods. And then on top of that connectivity, we have built an open application framework. And the best way to think about this is Apple's App Store. It's very, very similar in terms of how it looks and how it functions. And this platform is open, and we think that encourages rapid innovation, both from Tradeshift in terms of delivering new capabilities and applications, through our partners like PayPal and Intuit and others developing applications on top of the platform. But most importantly for enterprises, they now have control over the process and control over additional applications they may choose to develop and add to the connectivity they've created with their supply chain. How's the market responding to this? We think very well that we're the fastest growing B2B network today. In just 3 short years, we have companies connected with us in 196 countries around the world. with the Intuit relationship, which we'll talk about in a second, there are over 5 million companies connected to the Tradeshift platform, processing 15 million invoices a year and 200 billion in spend. And this is all growing very rapidly. Fortune 500 companies like Nike and DHL are rolling out electronic invoicing, workflow, supply chain finance, dynamic discounting, vendor management, and over 20 other applications with us, and they're doing that on a global basis. So we think there's a lot of validation that we're doing things right here. So just a quick note about the Tradeshift Intuit partnership and how we think this affects the landscape of invoicing adoption. As I'm sure you're aware, QuickBooks is the most popular accounting software package in the world today, unless you count Microsoft Word, which accounts for quite a few of the invoices still being generated out there. But these 5 million, by virtue of this relationship with Intuit, these 5 million QuickBooks users or companies now have a built-in access to the Tradeshift platform. So they don't have to change anything. They don't have to do anything. They can generate electronic XML invoices delivered through the Tradeshift platform to their customers without changing a thing. For the enterprise, we think this means a couple of important things. It means that onboarding of the long tail for suppliers becomes almost effortless. I mean, in the sense that a large portion of these suppliers are already onboarded and connected to the Tradeshift platform, so nothing to do there. And what this means in terms of ROI and a business case is that there should be a significant improvement over existing approaches, in that these companies now can participate and contribute to the business case of enterprises very, very quickly. So let's talk for a second about how Tradeshift solves this connectivity problem. Just to look very quickly at what a typical supply chain looks like for an enterprise. On the left, you see large suppliers, which of course account for the highest volume of invoices, but again, there are fewer of those kinds of companies. As you move to the right, there are more and more medium and small companies, of course, transacting on lower volumes of invoices. So in terms of delivering options for suppliers, making it easy for them to connect, of course, many of the largest suppliers in the world have invested in integration with their customers. Many participate in existing supplier and procurement networks. What Tradeshift does is we support all of the major standards and all of the formats of these other networks. So, for example, a supplier that's delivering CXML invoices through Ariba today, when we approach them on behalf of our customers and ask them to join Tradeshift, it's a very easy discussion. They simply continue sending invoices in that same format. They pointed those invoices at Tradeshift, and we just inform them that they no longer have to pay the fees they're paying Ariba. So as you can imagine, these suppliers generally very willingly jump at the opportunity to work with Tradeshift. As I mentioned, we have this application framework on top of Tradeshift's platform, which has a variety of plug-and-play connectors for the most popular accounting packages in the world. These include things like Sage in Europe. In some cases, these are simple adapters that can be activated with the click of a button. In other cases, there's true native integration, as I mentioned in the case of QuickBooks and how those QuickBooks users can connect. Of course, there will always be suppliers that have not invested in major accounting systems and prefer to use a web application. So Tradeshift offers a very advanced web application. The difference with our web application is it was designed with suppliers first and foremost in mind. Next, I'll just touch on how we close the gap on the remaining suppliers and the remaining connectivity challenge. We talked a little bit about innovation. Tradeshift has essentially invented a new form of OCR engine that allows suppliers to submit paper and PDF invoices. The CloudScan engine converts those into electronic documents, and then furthermore includes those suppliers in future onboarding campaigns to convert them to true electronic channels. So what this means is that out of the gate, large enterprises can receive 100% of their invoices electronically without forcing disruptive change on the way suppliers submit invoices today. So a combination of a variety of innovative connectivity approaches, and in removing the biggest barrier, which is the fee issue, we think contributes to solving this connectivity problem that exists today. Let's talk, just 1 second more about CloudScan, and I won't get into detail here, but I think it's worth mentioning. Until now, scanning and OCR have essentially been kind of a dead end for companies. Providers of scanning technology and services, if you think about it, they really don't have an incentive to help you with your e-invoicing goals. Otherwise, they'd be out of business. So at Tradeshift, we take a fundamentally different view of scanning and OCR. We see it more or less as a rapid onboarding tool. As I mentioned, it's an engine that converts PDF and XML and ensures that all inbound invoices are delivered to the enterprise back office systems as electronic documents from the very beginning. CloudScan is married to our platform's onboarding campaign management tools. So these PDF and paper suppliers are ultimately guided to better connectivity options. So for example, if we detect that a paper or PDF invoice was generated by Sage, that supplier will be entered into an onboarding campaign that directs them to our free plug-and-play connector for Sage. And then they just activate that through the App Store, and they're off and running. It's really that easy. So what CloudScan enables is, again, the immediate receipt of all inbound invoices as electronic documents without disruption or change management. And then over time, because of the integration with the platform, we convert those suppliers from these paper and PDF submission methods into real electronic submission methods. So you see over time the mix of paper and email declining, the use of scanning and OCR declining, and the real connectivity paying off in the form of this electronic submission process. So why do suppliers use Tradeshift? Just to summarize here, from the beginning, when Tradeshift was started, we invested quite a bit of effort in understanding what suppliers wanted from these solutions, as opposed to the prevailing approach, which was to only think about the buying organization. So we've specifically designed our solutions with suppliers in mind. They're able to submit invoices through the channel of their choosing. They're not forced to go to portals. They're not forced to use proprietary software. They can connect, most preferably using their existing accounting and ERP software, so that there's really no change on their side in terms of the processes. They connect once, this is a one-time effort, and then they're able to reach all of their customers, whether those customers are on the Tradeshift platform or not. They can generate and send electronic invoices to their customers. And of course, very importantly, no supplier fees ever from Tradeshift. Very quickly, I just wanted to give you a quick look at the Tradeshift applications. You can see that these exist on multiple devices. This is not your father's enterprise software solution. It's 100% cloud-based. It's purpose-built to be easy and useful and available when and where you want to use it. So we think the utility and the usability of our software enhance adoption also. And this is not just with suppliers, it's internally within your organization. Users enjoy using the software because it is so easy, as well as suppliers. So we think that's a key difference in adoption results. And speaking of results, let's talk. Let's see where the proof is in all this. We talked about innovative technologies and approaches, but what's been the impact? Let's talk about two quick examples of projects we're involved in and what's happening with those projects. So the first one is a company called Kuehne + Nagel. If you're not familiar with them, they're the world's largest logistics and freight provider. We're currently involved in a project where we're rolling out to over 165,000 suppliers, and these suppliers are located in over 100 companies, close to 120 different countries. So what are the results? What are the results we're experiencing there? As you can see from this slide, looking at results after the first month or 30 days of onboarding effort, almost 30% of Wave 1 suppliers were onboarded. And this is pretty remarkable given that these suppliers were located in 5 different countries around the world. So again, the onboarding efforts, of course, continue there with Kuehne + Nagel, but these were amazing results for just the first 30 days. Our next project I just wanted to touch on very briefly is with the UK's National Health Service. Again, if you're not familiar with the National Health Service, they are the 5th largest buying organization in the world, and they run all the healthcare providers for the UK. We believe this is actually the largest, or close to the largest, electronic invoicing project underway in the world, involving 140,000 suppliers and 5 million invoices a year. And before Tradeshift, their processes were 100% paper-based. So again, let's look at some results from that project. As you can imagine, it's not just about onboarding; it's about driving actual transaction volumes through that connectivity. So interesting results here at NHS show that after just 3 months, 55% of the initial wave of suppliers had already registered and connected with Tradeshift. About 35% of these suppliers had already integrated to their accounting systems, and then of those, about 70% of those suppliers, or 24% overall, were actually transacting, delivering electronic invoices through the Tradeshift platform. Again, after just 90 days. So, pretty remarkable results. So, in summary, at Tradeshift, we believe that e-invoicing success and AP automation is predicated on solving the supplier connectivity challenge. It's why we invested so much effort in changing the way things are done and really trying to innovate in this area. And then once the connectivity is in place, we think real AP automation can occur. So workflow, cash flow optimization through early payments, payment automation. None of these processes can work without the connectivity in place. Attempting to perform this type of automation without the connectivity will not yield good results. But we don't believe that the value of Tradeshift and the platform stops at AP automation. Once you've invested in this connectivity with your supply chain, we believe you should leverage those connections. That's why we built an open platform. That's why we enable other companies to produce applications and our customers to innovate and build on top of the platform for their specific needs. And we think what that means is that you're able to, essentially future-proof your business with Tradeshift. That concludes my presentation for today. I wanted to, of course, offer to answer questions here in a second. But if you care to reach out to me directly with questions about some of these projects I mentioned, or customers I mentioned, or anything we're doing, please do feel free to contact me, at the address below. Before we jump into the Q&A here, I just wanted to mention one one upcoming, our next upcoming webinar, which is focused on e-invoicing compliance in Latin America. For those of you doing business in those regions, you realize that the mandates there are pretty stringent and can involve fines for non-compliance, and unfortunately they can involve jail time as well. So for those of you doing business in Latin America, you won't want to miss that one. And that is on June 26th. For some reason I can't forward the slide here, but that's at June 26th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Okay, at this point, we'd like to open things up for some questions. Tatiana, I'll let you manage that and know what we got.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jason. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to submit them via chat window. And I do see that we have a couple of them already. Jason, can you talk more about your work with Nike?
Yeah, okay, so I can't talk in explicit detail here, but we are in the midst of rolling out a global electronic invoicing project with Nike. Nike had, previous to us, worked with the leading procurement networks and providers in this space, and it ultimately selected Tradeshift to come in and do this work. We are rolling out to approximately 80,000 suppliers around the world. And the interesting thing that happened as we began to work with Nike was that, of course, initially we're setting out to solve the electronic invoicing challenge, but quickly the conversation shifted to the other supplier-facing processes that we could address once this connectivity was created. So with Nike, we're planning to roll out over 20 additional applications, supplier-facing applications, in addition to e-invoicing, including dynamic discounting and supply chain finance, et cetera. So, a good example of how the platform can take companies beyond just sort of the electronic invoicing process.
Great, thank you, Jason. And we have another question, and it is, how is Tradeshift different from competitors?
Well, I think that sort of comes down to the three basic things, and I already touched on these, but I think you can't diminish the importance of our business model being different and removing that barrier of supplier fees. We think this is a radical change, and of course we pioneered this model. We think that's extremely important. We think that the innovation, the things like CloudScan, the partnerships with Intuit, these are real changes to the way things have been done, and we think those are important differences. And then, again, I'll harp on this continuously, but the platform is a fundamentally different idea in terms of how to solve these problems. We're not just a sort of dumb plumbing in the middle. We're this open, intelligent platform that can do quite a bit more.
Great. And another question, how is Tradeshift able to provide free e-invoicing solution for suppliers?
Yeah, also, as I said, we started the company with not relying on those transactional fees. So, there are some companies that are trying to remove that from their business model, but it's very difficult for a company that started with that model to pivot and change and shift to other revenue sources. So our model has always been to derive our revenue around the electronic invoicing process from the enterprises. We think that's where a large amount of the benefit accrues, but we do have a variety of other applications that value-added applications for which we charge fees on top of our platform as well. So there's a revenue derived from those sources as well. But for suppliers, there will never be transaction fees.
Okay, great. And these seems to be the main questions that were coming from the audience. Again, I want to remind you, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask them. And Jason, if you want to add anything else to it, I think we're closer to the end.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, again, on behalf of Tatiana and Tradeshift and myself, I just wanted to thank you for taking a little bit of time out today, to hear our thoughts, to see what's happening in our industry, and maybe understand a little bit better about Tradeshift's approach to these challenges. So, thank you again, and please do feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all.
Again, just a reminder, everyone, please, if you do have some follow-up questions, make sure to email Jason. You can also email anything to hello@tradeshift.com. If you want a copy of the report mentioned during the webinar, just make sure to send us an email. We will make all the slides available after the presentation, and we'll make sure to follow up with you within this week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and goodbye.
Thank you.